Okay, it's ready to go. It is dumping out all over the place. And of course you can pre-fill the filter if you're so inclined. My oil sample is properly packaged in the included prepaid Blackstone envelope, and it's ready to be shipped. As a bonus, let's go ahead and cut open my oil filter and see what's inside. There we go. Right on. I've just received back my oil sample report from Blackstone Laboratories, so let's open this thing up and see what's inside. I see red right. Oh no, this isn't good. Hey friends, Jimmy here with One Road. Today we're going to be doing something that we've never done on the channel before, and that is taking an oil sample from one of my vehicles, sending it off to a laboratory, and having them send me back the results. Then we'll read those results together and see just what the condition of the engine is that we're testing. Now, doesn't that sound fun? Let's get into it. Yes, today we are taking an oil sample, and that sample is gonna be from my 2005 GMC Envoy. I bought this vehicle from the original owner with just 25,000 miles on it. 25,000 original miles. It was 13 years old at the time. Today it's 16 years old and has roughly 40,000 miles. So that means in the first 13 years of this vehicle's life, it was only driven about 1,900 miles a year. So it's had plenty of time to sit. I've always heard that letting a vehicle sit is just as bad, if not worse, than actually driving the thing. Obviously, in an engine, we're not just worried about wear items, we're worried about gaskets too. And I think the theory is letting a vehicle sit without being driven is really bad for all the O-rings and gaskets that basically seal the engine up. So that oil, which is the lifeblood of an engine, needs to be circulated throughout that engine regularly. And with that oil being circulated, it lubes up the entire inside of the engine and also helps those gaskets to swell up and seal off things like the heads or the rear main seal. That's the theory anyway. If you guys have any input on that, please don't hesitate to comment down below. Let's start the discussion. So yes, at this point, this Envoy is 16 years old and has only 40,000 original miles. So it's had its fair share of sitting. Also, since it's been in my possession, I haven't put too many miles on it, but it's gone from 25 to 40,000. And this vehicle has been great to us. I haven't sensed any real issues whatsoever. There's been a couple things I've had to fix here and there, which you've seen on the channel, but nothing internal with the engine. The engine runs smooth as glass, and I've always used Mobil 1 fully synthetic oil. If you want to see a video I made when I first bought this vehicle, I'll link it right here. So if you go to the Blackstone Laboratories website, which I'll link down in the description below, you can actually order a test kit, which they will send to you right away, and it's free. It comes with everything you need in order to collect the sample, package it up safely, and ship it back to Blackstone. Then they'll run the test and they'll email you back the results. Now the test itself is not free. I'm paying about $30 right now for each test, but I think that's a small price to pay to figure out exactly what's going on inside your engine. You know, do you have a head gasket that's failing that's causing antifreeze to contaminate the oil? Or is there excessive wear inside your engine and maybe you need to think about changing your engine oil? This test can provide a ton of information regarding the overall health of your engine. It's kind of exactly like taking a blood test, come to think of it. So let's begin the process of the oil change and collect that sample. The first step in the process is to actually get out and drive the vehicle. This is going to accomplish a couple of things. First off, it's going to heat the oil up and burn off any moisture that might be in it. Secondly, it's going to mix it really well. That'll ensure that we get a great sample. About 15 minutes of driving should do it. Now that the vehicle has been driven, we should have all of the moisture out of the oil, and the oil should be mixed up really good. The next step is to make sure you let this system cool down. This oil is incredibly hot and you do not want to burn yourself. Okay, this is the moment of truth. You want to make sure your area is properly set up. You want to have your drain pan in place, you want to have extra rags in case you spill something, and you want to have your bottle ready to go. This is my drain plug and it's going to drain directly down into my drain pan. I'm going to grab my ratchet and start to loosen it. You'll want to make sure that the lid is off of your bottle and it's ready to capture the sample. I've got my bottle ready to go and I'm going to keep it in my left hand here. Making sure that my drain pan is properly placed, with my right hand, I'm going to keep positive pressure on this drain plug and unscrew it. Okay, it's ready to go. Now, midstream, I'm gonna grab my sample. And there it was. Perfect. Now that my sample has been gathered, I can let the rest of the oil drain out. And here is that lovely sample, and the first thing I'm gonna do is clean it off. Now that the sample jar is nice and clean, we're gonna package it up. Included in the kit is this bag and gray absorbent mat. I'll take the sample and go ahead and wrap it up into this absorbent mat. After that, I'll take this sample and place it into this bag. Then I will take as much air out as possible and zip it up. Now here is my sample properly packaged. I'll go ahead and take this shipping container and place it inside. I'm also going to fill out this information card and place it inside. And with everything placed inside, we can go ahead and close it up. It should look like this when you place it into the shipping package. Blackstone also includes this handy shipping envelope. We'll go ahead and place our sample inside the envelope, and then we'll seal it up. Now that the sample is taken care of, we can continue with our oil change. I already have the drain plug back in, and next I need to remove and replace the oil filter. Finally, after a lot of messing with this thing, I was able to get this oil filter loose, and it is dumping out all over the place, but I got it. Now that I have the old oil filter out, I can replace it. In this case, I'm going to use this Wix XP designed for fully synthetic oil, and the first thing I'm going to do with this is lube up this gasket. I also want to make sure that this gasket mating surface for the oil filter is clean and clear. We want to make sure there's no debris, and especially no old gasket stuck on there. If you tilt the bottle before you take the cap off, usually there's enough oil in this cap in order to lube up the gasket. And of course, you can pre-fill the filter if you're so inclined, but of course, unless you're extremely careful, this could lead to a mess. Not everyone pre-fills the oil filter, and there is a big debate out there about it. My stance is, if you can, go for it. For me, I do it with the filters that screw on vertically. That way I don't spill anything when I'm screwing it on. And just like the oil that came out of this engine, we're going to be using this Mobil 1 fully synthetic 5W30. This engine takes 7 quarts of oil. Everything is buttoned up down below. So I'm going to start filling it now. 7 quarts down the hatch, we can button this thing up. My oil sample is properly packaged in the included prepaid Blackstone envelope, and it's ready to be shipped. As a bonus, let's go ahead and cut open my oil filter and see what's inside. This oil filter is a Premium Guard PG5288EX, and that's for extended life. You can see the gasket here looks like red silicone. So I'll take my oil filter cutter and place it right on top. Then I'll just tighten it down till it starts to get snug and begin turning the filter. Tighten it a little more, turn the filter a little more. Tighten it a little more, turn the filter more, and eventually the lid should pop right off. Getting close, I can hear it. There we go. Right on. And right away we can see this anti-drain back valve, which also seems to be silicone, and interestingly, it's see-through. And pulling the cartridge out, we can see the filter media, and there does seem to be a lot of pleats in this one. Inside, we can see there is an actual coil spring as opposed to a stamped steel spring. The case itself seems to be nice and strong. Taking a peek inside the case here, you can see that dark spot right there in the center of the screen. And that's there because I actually had a magnet stuck to the outside of this filter. Now, it wasn't a big, gigantic magnet like I have on my other vehicles. I was testing out whether or not just a simple random neodymium magnet would work, and it looks like it has because all of that dark stuff is definitely magnetic material, and it's most likely small enough that it wouldn't have gotten caught in the filter media. I'm a big believer in magnets on oil filters, and this just goes to show you why. Looking inside of this oil filter, you can see a metal core as well as obviously metal end caps. Overall, I gotta say this definitely looks like a very good oil filter. I've just received back my oil sample report from Blackstone Laboratories, so let's open this thing up and see what's inside. I see red right. Oh no, this isn't good. Just kidding, that wasn't from Blackstone. I totally made that up. Don't fret, they will not send you an envelope that tells you to sell your car. This is the actual report, so let's go over it and see what it says. Well, first off, if we read the comments section, it says, James, universal averages offer a baseline for comparison, showing typical wear for a GM 4.2 liter after 6,500 miles of oil use. Before I go any further, I'd like to state right here in the beginning that when I filled out the information card, I put roughly 5,000 miles as the mileage on the oil. And now that I really think about it, it was probably a bit more than that. When my wife's Envoy initially needed an oil change, it was right at the exact time that I was actually moving cross country. So being that I had 3 vehicles and I needed to do oil changes on all 3 and an entire house to pack up with 2 trailers and the gargantuan task of driving cross country 2,000 miles a total of 3 times, I couldn't get around to changing the oil for the Envoy. So I think at that point it had roughly 5,000 miles, and then with the cross-country trek, add another 2,000 to that. So realistically, I was probably somewhere around 7,000 miles or so. Completely honestly, I really don't know, and that's really lame of me, but I just can't remember. The reason why I tell you that is because some of the numbers in here we'll go over are slightly elevated, and I think it's simply due to the fact that there's actually more miles on this oil than I wrote down. But let's get into it. Okay, so continuing on, it says, this sample was in use for a shorter run and metals are generally a bit higher than average, but the balance is perfectly normal. A road trip with a lot of highway mileage is usually easy on an engine, but if harder use was also a factor, then metals might be tied to that. Or this wear profile could prove normal for you. The oil held up well and no contamination showed up. Check back for trends. So again, in that information card I filled out, I did let them know that there was approximately a 2,000 mile road trip on this oil. I didn't know if that really mattered. I just wanted to let them know in case something completely crazy popped up. So that's what they're referring to in the comments here. Okay, so before we get into the numbers, keep in mind that this vehicle is a 2005. At the time of this oil change and sample, there was approximately 40,000 original miles on the engine. It's practically like new. But I don't know exactly how the previous owner treated the vehicle. I'm assuming he treated it well. But with only about 26,000 miles on it when I bought it, did he do 1 oil change, 2, 3? I mean, I really don't know. So the vehicle is roughly 16 years old. We have 40,300 miles on it as of the point of this oil change. And I think that the oil itself has much more than the 5,000 miles that I stated. So getting into the numbers, we can see the aluminum is the first one. We got a number 6. And the universal average is number 4. So the aluminum is slightly higher. These elements are in parts per million, by the way. The chromium is a level 1, and they say the average is 1. The iron is a level 25, and the average is 16. Now that's what kind of alarmed me a little bit, but again, it's probably many more miles on this oil than I initially stated, so it's probably totally normal. The copper is a level 6, and they say the average is a 4. Lead, 0. Tin, 0. And this next one is a little hard to say. Molybdenum, I think. It says level 71, and the universal average is 78. Nickel, we're at 0. Manganese, we're at 8. Universal average is 2. Silver, titanium, both 0. Potassium, 1. Universal average is 3 on that one. Boron, 34. Universal average is 39. Silicon, 17. Universal average is 13. Sodium, we have a 7. Universal average is 52. Calcium, we're at 968. Universal average is 1887. Magnesium, we're at 693, universal average is 247. Phosphorus, 631, universal average 690. Zinc, 721, and the average is 796. All right, so what does that all mean? So basically the aluminum, chromium, iron, copper, lead, tin, those are all wear metals. And on their website, they have a description of what all of this means, so let's read that. Okay, so with the wear metals, we have first aluminum, and they say that it's from pistons, bearings, cases, which is heads and blocks. Chromium could be from the piston rings. It says it's a trace element in steel. Iron is from the cylinders, rotating shafts, the valve train, any steel part sharing the oil. Copper would be brass or bronze parts, copper bushings, bearings, oil coolers. Lead would be from bearings, leaded gas, fuel additives. Tin would be from bearings, bronze parts, piston coatings, which is rare, nickel, trace element in steel, plating, and some cylinder types. Silver is from bearings, titanium, some intake valves, and connecting rods, aftermarket parts, oil additive. Okay, as far as the potassium, sodium, and silicon, those are contaminants. Potassium would be from antifreeze, sodium would be from antifreeze, and silicon would be from airborne dirt that's getting into the oil because it's getting through your air filter. Silicon could also be from sealers, gaskets, sand-casted parts, and spray lubricants, antifreeze inhibitor, oil additive. So there's a wide array of silicon being in the oil. Okay, so additives is next, and these are things that manufacturers put in the oil to try to help it out. So the first one, molybdenum, anti-wear additive. Second one, manganese. It's a trace element additive in some gasoline. It says boron. We have a detergent dispersant, so it's a cleaning additive. Calcium, again, a detergent dispersant, which is cleaning. Magnesium, detergent dispersant. Phosphorus, anti-wear, so that'll help with the slickness of the oil. Zinc, again, anti-wear, helps the engine to not wear away as quick. And barium is a detergent dispersant, so that's a cleaner, again, to help clean the internal components of your engine as it's being used. Now, if we look back at the properties of the oil, we can see the SUS viscosity at 210 degrees Fahrenheit is 57.7. Values should be roughly 55 to 63. So we're right in that good range with the oil. The CST viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius says 9.57. Values should be 8.8 to 11.3, so we're right in that good range. Flash point in Fahrenheit, I believe this is the point at which the oil catches fire. So it's about 400 degrees. So it should be greater than 385, it says, and that's just indicating that there is no fuel in the oil, which is a good thing. The fuel percent, it says that we are at less than 0.5%, and it says that the value should be less than 2, so that's very good. Antifreeze 0, water 0, insolubles is 0.3, and it says it should be less than 0.6, so we're good there. Total base number 2.2, and it should be greater than 1. So those all look really good. So if we go back to the comment section, it says at the end there, it says the oil held up well. See viscosity, 2.2 TBN, and no contamination showed up. Check back for trends, meaning do this type of test more often so we can see what's happening with your oil and the engine. Okay, so from reading this report and just my plain common sense, I can see that my engine's in pretty dang good condition here. We have 0 antifreeze leaking, so that means the head gasket is in really good condition, which is great. And the oil I'm using, which is Mobil 1 5W30, the fully synthetic stuff you can get from Costco, seems to be doing a really good job. The only numbers of concern to me is the increased level of iron, aluminum, and copper. But again, I think that is strictly due to actually having more miles on this oil than I initially wrote down. So with that being said, I think we're looking good, and I will do another one, not at the next oil change, but maybe the one after that. So I'm not gonna pretend here that I'm some sort of professional that knows exactly what I just read, because I don't. This is the first time I've ever done this, but from my common sense and the descriptions that they give, as well as the comments that they wrote, I think my engine's in really good condition, and I also think the oil was doing a very good job. I'm fairly certain that there is many more miles on this oil than I stated, and a lot of that was from Los Angeles stop and go traffic, so yes, that probably did have a big impact on these numbers, but overall, the numbers balance out really well, and everything looks really good. Again, they say the sample was in use for a shorter run. That's because I wrote the 5,000. And metals are generally a bit higher than average, but the balance is perfectly normal. So everything here is perfectly normal. I guess the real tale will be the next time I perform this test, maybe in like 12,000 miles or something like that. And then we can compare then versus now and really get a good snapshot of the health of this engine and exactly what's going on inside. Other than that, I'm happy with this. It was easy to do. I'm glad I did it, and I hope you guys got something out of this too. Well, how about that? This is a first for the channel. We've never done an oil sample before. It was an incredibly easy process, and I would recommend it to anyone who would like to know more about what's going on internally in your engine. So now we know what this '05 GMC Envoy is doing with just 40,000 miles on it. And by the way, if you're still watching this video and you enjoyed it, it entertained you, hit that thumbs up, would you? All right, well, I'm Jimmy for One Road, and I will see you in the next one.